Shakespeare, in the play As You Like It, wrote these words: "Sweet are the uses of adversity, which like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in its head. And this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything." So my purpose today is to support you in sweetening adversity and creating security. The human condition is we see adversity as a problem, and we place our security in things of the world. And the spiritual solution to this human condition is to see adversity as an opportunity and to place our feeling of security within us. In Chapter 7 of Spiritual Economics, Eric Butterworth reminds us that consciousness is the key to all things that happen to us. Consciousness is the key to personal prosperity. So maybe that helps understand on a deeper level why the first part of our mission statement at Unity Santa Fe is to raise consciousness. Because when we raise consciousness, we transform lives and we do our part to heal the planet. So economics is basically a psychological phenomenon. And the economy, Butterworth says, is a barometer that registers the highs and lows of consciousness. And that's the highs and lows of what Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, called race consciousness, the consciousness of the human race. I always say, if you want to know what race consciousness is, turn on the television news, or turn on any show on television, because the consciousness, our consciousness is what is responsible for whatever we're showing or seeing. Early on in this pandemic that I like to call time different, since we're in the city different and this is the spiritual community different, I expressed concern about my portfolio tanking, and a wise friend who happens to be here today reminded me to be grateful that I have a portfolio to tank. It's like, duh, that hadn't occurred to me. The things we take for granted, right? A Wall Street Journal article in the early 1990s proclaimed, "Positive thinking is the way out of our economic malaise." It decried the excessive pessimism then engulfing the country. It quoted the president of a large corporation as urging business leaders to adopt a more positive attitude to help dispel fears of impending economic doom and to restore confidence in the American people. So, as students of truth, we are to become a leader in all conversations whenever the discussion turns to negativity about the economy. Don't acquiesce in negative conclusions. Position yourself on the side of prosperity potential. Instead of talking about supply side economics, Butterworth suggests we talk about truth side economics. That's truth with a capital T. Now, this doesn't mean we deny what's going on in the world. What it means is that we deny what's going on in the world, the power to make us miserable, to make our lives unmanageable. It means focusing on and aligning ourselves with truth, including the divine law of prosperity. And when we do that, we put ourselves in the flow of divine substance and grace. It means changing any thoughts that block the natural flow of substance and taking responsibility for our lives and our consciousness, even and especially when things appear problematic. So it goes back, I think I say it almost every week. We're responsible for our second thought and our first action. Because that first thought may be negative. Oh my, this doesn't support us. So we're invited to see problems as lemons and seize the opportunity to make lemonade. To look for the positive, knowing that nothing is ever a complete loss. There may be some loss, but nothing is ever a complete loss. And Butterworth counsels, have the stability and perspective to deal with both success and failure with spiritual poise. So in every success, be humbled with the realization that without action of forces greater than ourselves, we could not have succeeded. And in every setback, be assured that failure is a part of achieving success. Renowned psychologist B.F. Skinner wrote, "Failure is not always a mistake. It may simply be the best one can do under the circumstances. The real mistake," he says, "is to stop trying." And we've all failed many times, although we may not remember. We fell down the first few times we tried to walk. We almost drowned the first time we tried to swim. We didn't hit the ball the first time we swung a bat. Do you know that heavy hitters, the ones who hit the most home runs, also strike out the most? Babe Ruth struck out 1,330 times, but he also hit 714 home runs. R.H. Macy failed 7 times before his store in New York caught on. Albert Einstein could not speak until he was 4 years old, did not read until he was 7, and flunked his freshman math class. When Thomas Edison was a young boy, his teacher said he was so stupid he could never learn anything. When F.W. Woolworth was 21, he got a job in a store but was not allowed to wait on customers because he didn't have enough sense. Later, his 5 and dime gave him all the dollars and cents he needed, by the way. Walt Disney was once fired by a newspaper editor because he had no good ideas. Caruso was told by one music teacher, "You can't sing. You have no voice at all." An editor told Louisa May Alcott that she was incapable of writing anything that would have popular appeal. In 1922, Harry Truman was 38, in debt, and out of work. 23 years later, he was President of the United States. Beethoven's music teacher said, "As a composer, he is hopeless." But Beethoven had the first laugh. Ha 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 ha! And did you hear about the 2 rabbits being chased by a pair of foxes? And they were finally trapped in a culvert with a fox at each end. And the first rabbit said, "What do we do now?" And the second rabbit said, "Stay here until we outnumber them." So don't worry about failures. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try. At least the rabbits were going to try. Now, while unemployment is at an all-time high right now, it's important to remember that it's not being unemployed or even employed that makes a difference in our lives. It is how we accept these conditions, the attitudes, the feelings, the general tone of our consciousness as we face the experience. And Butterworth offers these tips. He said, the first need is not to find a job. The first need is to change the self-image. Don't see yourself as unemployed, but see yourself as ready for work. If you're unemployed, then you have a job, and that job is to get work. So get up early, get neatly dressed, be enthusiastic and expectant in your work of finding a job. See it as a challenge to your faith and determine to grow through the experience. Remember, you are a whole person in a whole universe. You are an individualized expression of the creative flow. There's a need for your unique contribution. You are needed even as you have a need. And the orderly universe is bringing you together with that which is looking for you. And remember, this challenging situation did not come into your life to stay. Throughout the Bible, we read the phrase, "It came to pass." So accept the reality of the situation, but not its permanence. Be aware of the power of your thoughts and words. Put into verbal form only those statements that you really want to see manifest in your life. So instead of talking about your problem, reframe it and talk about your project. And then tackle your project with vigor, imagination, and conviction that it will be done. And don't magnify problems out of proportion by focusing on them so closely that you can't see an opportunity when it shows up. No one or no thing can ruin your life. You are responsible for the way you respond to what happens to you. The incident is external. The reaction is internal. So what's happening within you is what most matters. Where is your faith? Is your faith in the external situation, or is your faith in the unborn potential of creativity and substance? Perhaps your present experience is your great opportunity to give birth to that unborn potential. Perhaps this disappointment is a divine appointment. So like an oyster transforms an irritation into a priceless and beautiful pearl, begin pearling. Accept the possibility that this experience might be the best thing that ever happened to you. So what does the Bible say about this? Well, in Jeremiah 29, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and a future." And what does unity say? Our co-founder Charles Fillmore in the book Prosperity says, "Every time you say, 'I'm a little short of funds, I haven't as much money as I need,' you are putting a limit on the substance in your consciousness." Myrtle Fillmore said, "Keep your thoughts free from worry. Keep them on matters close at hand, on God's presence and power." And Mary Kupferle said, "Let go of all anxiety and every fear, for God will see you through. Regardless of any test facing you, God will see you through wonderfully. God will see you through safely. God will see you through wisely. God will see you through successfully." Professor Peter Bartocki, when he was at Boston University, said, "It may be that any view of life that puts security rather than creativity first has misread life at its best, and thus misinterprets the cosmic process." So when we place the emphasis on outer things, we miss the whole meaning of life, because life is for expressing. Life is for growth and expansion. Butterworth says that there are two basic drives within each of us. Humanly, we seek to settle down, to be safe, to build fences, and to be secure. Divinely, we are created to express, to grow, and to extend our horizons. And he points out that the human race survived because our ancient ancestors' defense was in their creativity, in the intuitive flow of ideas, in their spiritual dimension, no matter how primitive. So when we place our security on outer things, we miss the meaning of life. And by the way, we do not grow old. When we stop growing, we are old. One of you recently told me how you took a job making much less money and how prospered you now are by the decreased hours, the workload, and stress. You have more time for your family, more time to enjoy life. That's prosperity. I once accepted a job at a lower grade in order to gain experience in a specialized area that eventually qualified me to advance from the clerical field to becoming a human resources professional. When Jesus called his disciples, they immediately left their nets to follow him, and they left the familiar to stretch themselves spiritually. So our divinity wants to grow, expand, express, and share with the world our gifts and talents. What is it that you were created to be? Does it mean leaving your nets to follow your passion? Today, do what you need to do to take care of your physical world, but do not allow that to keep you from experiencing the sunlight of the Spirit. Dare to dream. Dare to stretch. Dare to be the worthy individual you were created to be. And know this, true security can only come from within, from knowing that you are a child of God and that God wants for you only the highest and best. In Matthew, we read, "Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal." And in Luke, "Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." And Matthew, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." And also in Matthew, Jesus said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." At once they left their nets and followed him. So security does not come from without, but from within. And Martha Smock, in her poem Fear Not, says, "Security springs from an inner assurance of mind and heart and soul. It is the sustained realization of God's presence and power that lifts one above fear and defeat, unhappiness or discouragement. Security feeds on the wellspring of faith and joy within and keeps one confident, optimistic, and unafraid." My friend and colleague Jim Gaither in The Essential Charles Fillmore wrote, "There is a divinity that shapes our ends. It can be cooperated with by one who believes in things spiritual, and he will thereby be made prosperous and happy." Charles Fillmore wrote, "Spiritually awakened people study the law of conservation as it pertains to the spiritual and seek to build up a large reservoir or a large reserve consciousness of substance, life, strength, and power, rather than laying up material treasures that moth and rust consume and thieves break through and steal. And Charles Fillmore also said, those who hold the thought of accumulation so dominate in the world today are inviting trouble and even disaster, because right along with this thought goes a strong affirmation of the fear of loss of riches. So how do we put feet on today's message? How do we put feet on making lemonade and sweetening adversity? How do we put feet on security? Well, we know, seek first the kingdom. Seek first God as divine substance, and all things will be given to you as well. So we don't go into prayer asking or begging or supplicating. We go in to practice the presence of Spirit, to practice the presence, the power of divine substance. And then we put ourselves in the flow of prosperity, in the flow of grace and abundance. And then I have a practical prayer you might want to consider. That is, acknowledge the situation, so you're not taking a spiritual bypass. Deny the situation power to make you miserable and your life unmanageable. 3, affirm the truth. Divine substance is my source. My consciousness of divine substance is my supply. 4, give thanks in advance. 5, let go and let God. So that's acknowledge the situation, deny it power over you, affirm truth, give thanks in advance, let go and let God. Well, there's actually only 5. Somehow my fingers showed 6. So, and then where the rubber meets the road, be aware of how much media news you are letting mold your thinking about the economy. And don't add to the negative frenzy about the economy by involving yourself in conversations around it. But if you're in the midst of one, spin the conversation positively. And raise the world consciousness by raising your own consciousness around prosperity. I celebrate that each of us is inspired to sweeten adversity by taking the lemons life gives us and making lemonade. And in so doing, placing our security on the inner rather than the outer. And let's begin doing that right now by being one together in a sacred time of shared prayer based on words of Eric Butterworth. So I invite you to begin observing the breath. Allowing it to find its own rhythm and pace. Allowing each breath to relax the body, still the mind, open the heart. Feel the relaxation, the stillness, the openness. As you let come to mind the most difficult thing facing you right now, and say, this is a real stretch, say, welcome, welcome, welcome. I know this is the best thing that could happen to me. For I know in the happening there is revealed a new lesson to learn and new growth to experience. I know within me is an unborn possibility of limitless potentialities. And this is my opportunity to begin to give birth to new ideas, new strength, and new vision. I accept the reality of the difficulty, but not its permanence. I am not at the end of anything. I am simply between opportunities, between jobs. I know that in the movement of it has come to pass, something wonderful is on its way to me, far surpassing anything I have ever known before. And if I should feel the slightest irritation of fear or anxiety, I say to myself, all right, let's get busy purling. I am secure, for I know who I am, a richly endowed child of God. I am secure in all I do, for I know my oneness with the divine process. I am secure in all I have, for I know my treasure is in my mind, not in things. I live my life from day to day as if God's supportive substance were as exhaustless and dependable as the air I breathe, which it most certainly is. Knowing these truths, I rest in divine substance in the silence. As we gently bring our attention back to this time and place, silently say, thank you, divine substance, that you are my source, and my consciousness of you is my supply, my security, and that in me that sweetens adversity. Thank you, thank you, thank you, that it is so, and so it is, and so I am. Amen.